Welcome to the show. I'm Doug Johnson, and this is The Business of Life. During each show, we highlight a local personality who has some tips or strategies for success to share with us. Today's guest is a 29-year-old entrepreneur who is doing what it takes to be successful, both in business and in life. Marcus Peters, owners of Lasting Impressions Landscape and Design, is proving to the world that he knows what is important. Marcus, thanks so much for being here today.
Doug, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, certainly. I'm really excited that you're joining us today.
Absolutely.
So, Marcus, our audience gets to know you a little bit. What's your backstory? Where do you come from? What are you doing? What have you done?
Sure, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm 29 years old. I was born in Northeast Ohio in '88. Grew up with a single mom. Parents separated at an early age. And kind of throughout life, I saw the struggles she went through and the work ethic that she put in to make sure that we lived a comfortable life. And that instilled in me, I think, where I get my work ethic and motivation. She was everything from a police officer to a sales rep to management positions to everything you can think of. And she just basically grabbed the bull by the horn and rode with it no matter what she did. Early teenage years, she had some struggles that she was dealing with on a personal level, and unfortunately, I was actually taken away from my mom at a young age, and I had to go live with family members. And so, needless to say, I had a little bit of a rough childhood. Growing up in high school, not living with my mom anymore, living with, my aunts or my grandma. I had some resentment towards life. I just thought that everybody was against me and everything was against me. Okay. And I didn't make, I guess, the best decisions in high school. And I guess I had a lot of people, a lot of peers, and a lot of teachers that probably thought I would amount to nothing later on in life. So fast forward to 18 years old, me and my wife, which actually are middle school sweethearts, we got together in middle school, been together ever since.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's like a Cinderella story.
And child on the way.
Yes.
This is number 3.
Number 3, yeah. So
Great news.
That's a whole story in itself. So, 18 years old, we had our first child, and it was kind of I go that way or I go this way, and I chose to step up to the plate, and that was the year that I got into landscaping. It was my first job out of high school. Started working as a technician, just cutting grass and learning how to trim shrubs and stuff like that. And it was actually kind of weird, but I was like really passionate about it. I'm like, this is amazing. I can come to a property that looks like this and leave and it looks like this. So I started developing a passion for it. I didn't really know much about the industry, but thankfully, I had a good boss that was leading me in the right direction. And so I worked my way through the ranks a little bit, from technician to foreman, jumped around a couple companies, just kind of testing the water and searching for better opportunities. And I stumbled upon an owner of a company. It was a woman that had basically took me under her wing, and she saw what I didn't see in myself. And she saw that, she saw the passion, she saw the artistic skills that I had, and she basically let me run with the enhancement side of the company, which means planting flowers, designing how we're going to lay garden beds out, plant stuff like that. So that was a whole nother aspect. I go from cutting grass to the design world. Loved it, loved every minute of it, but unfortunately, with a kid and working as a foreman, the money wasn't necessarily right. So I left seeking bigger and better things and chasing the money, and ended up in a factory for a year and absolutely hated it. So
you kind of learned your lesson there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I was 24 years old, and I said, you know what, I'm going back into the landscape field. That's what I love, that's what I'm passionate about, that's what I want to make a career out of. But I told myself that, instead of going back in the field, I'm going to be a manager. And I was very scared, and I didn't think that anybody would hire me as a manager, but I told myself that it's going to happen, and basically, the law of attraction, I manifested it into reality. And next thing I know, I ended up landing an operation manager job at a large landscape company in Northeast Ohio. Worked my way there for operations management to account management. Started dealing with clients. Started getting, going through sales training, dealing with client relations, and realizing that, wow, look, there's actually something going on here. I go from cutting grass to actually making a career out of this.
Right.
So. Fast forward to actually 2016, when our second son was on the way, I realized that our lifestyle, unfortunately, does not match my finances. So I had to start, I actually bought a used lawnmower and started doing side jobs on the weekends, just cutting grass and doing whatever I could to just bring in some extra income. And, really always wanted to start my own business. I just never, I didn't have any experience in that. I have no, my education was high school. I didn't have any finance education, no business education. So I didn't think it was real. I didn't think it was realistic for me to even think that I could start my own business. Until finally, the feedback from my clients, my personal clients, was just overwhelming. I mean, they were like, Marcus, you should do this on your own. And I kept telling, I know, but I never really knew how to take that leap. So right after our second son was born, it's actually 1 week from today will be 1 year in business for the company.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we almost made it 1 year.
Well, you will make it.
I know. So right at that point, I knew what I had to do, and I knew that the time was now. No more waiting and no more contemplating if it was the right decision. I just went for it. I took everything I had and I invested it into the company. I started off, I learned how to do website development. I learned how to do all SEO. I learned everything on my own. I did everything. I didn't hire or outsource anything, and hit the ground running. And here we are, like I said, we're about to hit 1 year in business. And I got to be honest, Doug, it was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
I imagine
it really was.
so.
Yeah, it really was.
It's amazing, that feeling that you get from having your own business, and you're responsible. You get all the blame, but you also get all the credit.
Oh yeah.
And it's a really good feeling to know that you're the one making the decisions, and you can make or break yourself.
Absolutely. It's a little overwhelming, but it's a very good feeling as well.
So a year is quite a milestone to be in business, because many businesses don't make it that long. And so you mentioned learning stuff, and I know in our discussions that you and I have talked about motivational pieces and listening to self-help books and reading self-help books. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, absolutely. The funny thing is one of the books I picked up, it was an audiobook right before, this was kind of when I was on the edge. I knew I wanted to start my own business, just didn't really know how. A book I picked up, he's not a famous author or anything. He's actually just a guy that started a landscape company, and he's somewhat big on YouTube, but his name is Keith Kalfas, and he actually made a book that's called How to Start a Landscape Company with Zero Startup Money.
There you go.
I'm like, perfect.
Really.
This is speaking to me. So I actually I purchased the book, and I literally listened to it every single day, probably until I can recite the whole thing. Like a poem. Probably listened to it like 90 times, and finally I just said, okay. It basically got me out of my comfort zone and pushed me to realize that everything, all the fear that I had, false evidence appearing real. It was just that. It was just me putting all these roadblocks in front of myself. So I had to get over it. So Keith Kalfas was a huge inspiration for me starting off. There's also Lewis Howes. He's an entrepreneur. Barack Obama actually named him one of the most successful entrepreneurs under the age of 30. He's a great motivational speaker, life coach. I listen to him a lot. Instead of just wasting time listening to the newest hip hop tracks or this and that.
Right.
I really try to focus on bettering myself every day and learning something new.
How did you get that inspiration to know that you should listen to this stuff?
Well, like I said before, the person who you are 10 years from now or 5 years from now is going to be who you surround yourself by and the books that you read. So I always knew that. I just never had the time to really read. So I figured next best thing is audiobooks, As a landscaper, I'm always have ear protection on. I'm always out, most of the time in the field using some type of power equipment that requires ear protection. So why not slip the earbuds in underneath there and get some books in, get some reading time. At the company I was at before, my drive time was almost an hour each way. So it was beautiful, listen to How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Right.
I mean, just nonstop, just listening to all these self-help books that really helped me get out of my comfort zone and get out of my own way, basically.
One of the pieces that I found on your Facebook page, which I thought was really kind of cool, was a video by Mohammed Khatani entitled Speak Wisely. And in it, he talks about a very hardworking son who is seeking the approval of his father. And he works really hard to improve his grades and is so proud of himself and calls his dad and says, Dad, I did it. I got all A's. And, his dad says, I'm busy. The devastating consequences of those two words, the son started drinking, started taking drugs, and eventually died.
Yeah.
Two words can have such an influence. What spoke to you about that piece?
Well, I think the biggest thing that, the reason I shared that piece in particular is obviously because of, my children. Sometimes I need to put myself in check, especially being a business owner, a young entrepreneur. I mean, it's a million miles an hour all the time. There's no time for TV. There's no time for pleasure. I mean, it's a little bit, but it's so busy, so much. And, you have to remember to be in the present, especially for your children. I mean, you have a limited amount of time with them as an actual child. And, you're the biggest influence in their life. I didn't have probably the best influence when I was a kid. So I want to make sure that I'm there for my kids. And to me, that kind of put myself in check, knowing that, hey, use your words wisely. If you are busy, don't let them know that. Make time for them. Make time to listen. Because, there's certain things that, my sons might want to share with me. And if I brush them off and say I'm busy, they might feel uncomfortable to even share that or how to speak to it, to me about that. So that was one of the main things I got about it. And just to really use your words wisely. I mean, you have to. When you speak with people, you don't want to say hurtful things because there's things that I think I can replay in the back of my mind as growing up that I heard or people had said that it's hard to get over, and,
right.
and it can really put a negative effect on someone's life. So just use your words wisely and always try to be in the present. That's what I took from that piece.
Okay. Another piece that I was really impressed with, and I have to put my glasses on for this one, there's a chart about what successful people do and unsuccessful people do. And I like to just talk about some of these things.
Sure.
Successful people read every day as opposed to unsuccessful people who watch TV every day. And I think you've really kind of addressed that. But
yeah, and I mean, and not necessarily, you don't have to read every day, but as long as you're taking in some type of positive, whether it's a video, a motivational video, a chapter of a book, a whole book, watch Ellen if you get a chance. I mean, realistically, you just read something positive every day. I try to always start my day off with something positive because it kind of sets the mood for the day. And it says what unsuccessful people do is watch TV every day. Like I said, it's okay to sit and watch TV. it might not be okay to binge watch, five seasons of the Game of Thrones. You might feel a little guilty afterwards.
Right. Yep.
But it's very important to make sure that you're trying to develop self-growth every single day. And I think reading or listening is the best way to do that.
Okay. Successful people compliment as opposed to unsuccessful people who criticize.
Yeah, it's easy to criticize. It's really easy to look behind the glass and point fingers and say that they should have done this or they should have done that or they're not this or they're not that. That doesn't do anything except just, it's very important to make sure that you acknowledge people for who they are, what they do, and leave this earth as trying to influence people in a positive way. There's no point for criticism. I mean, if you're going to criticize somebody, criticize yourself, and learn how to better yourself from those, from criticism. That's one thing that I never agree with, and I teach my kids that every day. It's never put the blame or point the finger at someone else. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right, right, for sure.
Yeah.
The old adage.
Yeah.
Embrace change as opposed to fear change. And it seems that you kind of turned a switch at some point because you were so fearful of, the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you turned that switch.
Yeah, I think always as a kid, I've always embraced change. Like we would move all over the place, and I loved it. I loved change. I think with me, the hardest thing was that, being comfortable, having a comfortable salary, making good money, medical bills, medical 401k, all these things were comfortable. And it was really hard for me to jump out of my comfort zone and to change, even though I knew that it would benefit for the best later on in life. But it's super important to embrace change. I mean, if you don't evolve, you die. I mean, that's basically the lesson of life. You evolve or you die. I mean, you have to, every day you should work on changing for the better, or if this doesn't work, try a different outlook. So yes, I embrace change very much.
Okay. Talk about ideas as opposed to talk about people.
Yeah, I'm not, and again, I think we just touched on that. I don't talk about people. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to say I'm innocent. I mean, I've had my times where I might have said a couple things that I regret. But, with, for example, my crew, we're going to sit there and I'm not going to talk about how he should have done this better or this and this, or I should have done this better, or, I should have, sold the job for more money and we wouldn't be, let's talk about how to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Let's work as a group, let's work as a team and come up with ideas of how to make everybody's life better, everybody's experience better, instead of talking about what he did or what she did.
Okay, so. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you've touched on this, but successful people have a sense of gratitude as opposed to unsuccessful people who have a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you said that. I actually started, I fell off, unfortunately, from this practice, but I started a gratitude journal.
Okay.
Beginning of the winter. And it was just every day, every morning I'd wake up and I'd write 3 things I was grateful for. And it would kind of set the pace for the day. And it was trying hard not to be thankful for the same thing day after day.
Right.
But the effect that it had on me was amazing. Right before I go to bed, I'd reread those things and I'd write down, one simple thing I was going to do for tomorrow, to make tomorrow, to reach my goal for tomorrow. And just having gratitude in general. I mean, everybody can wish that they had a bigger house, or wish that they didn't have the adversities that they dealt with, or wish that they had a different spouse, or this and that. You have to be thankful for what you have. I mean, everything happens. We were talking about this earlier. Everything happens to you for a reason.
Right.
You are the creator of your destiny. So if you feel entitled for something, then go out there and get it. Don't sit there and mope and think that it should be handed to you. If you want it, you have to go get it. And in the time on the way working to go get that, be thankful for everything that you have. Be thankful. Like, I got to be honest, the thing that I'm realizing the most, I mean, the first year in business, like I said, went from a comfortable salary to now it's up to me to make sure that ends are meet.
Yep.
It's hard. It's not easy, but I read this, I heard this on a podcast, is to embrace and respect the struggle. I mean, you have to, because if everything was just handed to you, what would it be worth?
Right. You wouldn't appreciate it.
Yeah, you wouldn't appreciate anything. So gratitude is huge. I think that should be in everybody's top 3 things that they need to focus on is gratitude.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this, set goals and develop life plans as opposed to never set goals.
Sure, absolutely. And I wish I was a little bit better at goal setting. Thankfully, some of the mentors and employers that I worked for, they sent me through some pretty good training with goal setting and stuff like that. And it's easy to set a goal, but a realistic goal and a measurable goal, smart goals.
Smart goals.
Exactly.
Right.
That's where it gets important, is to dissect that goal. You can say, hey, I want to live in the Bahamas when I'm 30. Okay, well, what steps do you have to do to make sure that you get there? Write down daily goals, or write down monthly goals, or then weekly goals and daily goals. Like I said, I wish I was a little bit better at that. I think I eventually over time will be. It's just everything is just so fast paced at the moment.
Right.
With being the bookkeeper and being the installer and the salesman
and the marketer. Right, for sure.
Yeah, but my one goal, you got to have that big goal in the back of your head. You got to know what it is at all times. Someone needs to ask you what your goal is, and you need to know what it is, because at the end of the day, you have to be something that you're going after. If you're just running around aimlessly.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what your big goal is.
My biggest goal is to leave a legacy for my family and my children. And that's cool. At the end of the day, and affect people's lives in the making. It's not about the money. I mean, sure, I want to make a good living, but I want to make more of an impact than anything. I want to make sure that when I leave somebody, they have the best experience that they've ever had with the landscape company. Are we the best? Do we do the best work? I'd like to think so, but it's probably highly unlikely that we are the best. But I can guarantee this: we're going to put all of our passion and all of our charisma and everything that we have into that. No matter what job it is, we're going to put it all into there so that client has the best experience. And at the end of the day, that's my goal, is just to make sure that I can have a company that can eventually, whether it's we sell the company or my sons take it over, or if I am 70 years old still, installing pavers,
right.
Whatever that is, I just want to make sure that it's a legacy, and it's customers have a great experience.
Super. Let's talk about 3 strategies for success.
Sure.
And you and I talked about this a little bit. The first is to build long-lasting relationships. Why? What?
Yeah, it's
Talk
key.
with us.
To me, it's key. No matter what business you're in, whether you're working in sales or retail, or I feel comfortable buying from somebody that I trust, someone that I know is never going to steer me in the wrong direction. That's how I buy. I mean, not everybody buys like that. Some people are, personalities are different and stuff like that. But to me, it's most important to build the relationship, build the rapport, and then see where it goes from there. I mean, it's not. I know this might sound crazy, but I don't like sales. I just don't like selling. And I used to get so much crap from all of my previous employers because of that, because I was more of a people person. But I feel that, if I'm going to steer you in the right direction, if I'm going to tell you my professional opinion, and we're going to build a great relationship, you will buy from me if you want to. If you don't want to.
Well, I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people will not remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel.
I love that.
So
that's it.
That fits right in.
That's it.
Number 2 strategy, be a good communicator.
Sure. We talked about this. You had mentioned that millennials, people my age, sometimes struggle with making eye contact and talking face to face. But I think it goes back to number one, is just having good, solid relationship and rapport with people. I can talk to them like they're my friend, because they are my friend. I don't care if they're 10 years old or if they're 80 years old. I mean, we're gonna have good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I want to be able to leave there and them feel good about the conversation we just had. So communication is key. That is absolutely key for me. Do I drop the ball sometimes? Sure. Sometimes things get crazy and I might fail to communicate a little bit on a certain end, but I always try to over communicate. We're to the point where they're like, hey man, we get it. we get that you're going to be here at this exact time.
Uh-huh.
But I'd rather over communicate than leave them guessing.
Right.
So communication's key.
And number 3 is do everything to the best of your ability.
Sure, absolutely. It's easy to walk through life and do things with 50% of your ability. It's easy. That I actually heard this somewhere. It's became, I'm probably gonna mess this up, but it's became just a way of life, is to cut corners. It has literally became a way of life now, and it's sad to see that because in my business, people are paying for a service. They deserve the best service, the best quality that they're paying for. So at the end of the day, whether it's being a father, being a business owner, installing a patio, or cutting your grass, I'm going to make sure that I give it 110% every single time. Because if not, what's the point? You get one shot at this, so give it your all.
Marcus, that's a great place to leave this.
Yeah, that's
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And to our audience, again, Marcus Peters of Lasting Impressions, Landscape and Design. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
I have been told that when you text, there are different perceptions of what your text says. Now, there's been a recent study at Bingham University that confirmed in an experiment that if there is no punctuation at the end of a text, that you are considered to be more sincere than if you end the text with a period. Conversely, used to be if you ended everything with an exclamation point, that was considered to be rude. Now it's considered to be even more sincere than using no punctuation at all. Who comes up with this stuff anyway?